Hello, welcome to the August 25th, 2023 Club Cubase livestream. My name is Greg Undo and I'll be the host of the livestream today. If you have not attended a livestream before, how it works is you can ask questions in the live chat field or submit questions in advance to clubcubase@steinberg.de. When asking questions, if you could specify which version of Cubase you're using, whether it's Cubase LE, AI, Elements, Artist, or Pro, or other Steinberg programs, which version number, such as 10, 10.5, 11, or 12, and which operating system. That information is often very helpful in helping me to kind of solve a problem. We'll go through all the questions chronologically as people have asked. And if you don't get an immediate response to your question, if you could try to refrain from repeating the same question over and over again, that'll just kind of make it a slower experience and will allow us to not get through as many questions. So we appreciate that, and we'll try to go through all the questions again chronologically. We should have an index of all the topics covered in today's live stream posted and pinned to the top of the comments field several hours after the live stream ends. So you could quickly navigate to a particular area just by reading the question and clicking on the link. It'll take you to that direct part in the video. If you want to search for topics that have been covered in previous live streams done over 3 years since COVID started, since we ramped it up, you could go to cubaseindex.com, and we want to thank Jan from Stockholm for all of his work in creating that website. We have two people that serve as moderators. We have Agent K and Jazz Dude. So they're not Steinberg employees, they just do it to make it a better community. So I want to give a special thanks to them. We'll also give kudos to Jazz Dude for his work with the Cubase Nation Discord. It's a wonderful resource of information for the Steinberg community. It's kind of think of it as like a more interactive forum where you find different tutorials and articles that are really relevant to Steinberg users and other DAW users. And once again, my name is Greg Undo. I work for Yamaha Corporation of America. I primarily focus on Steinberg products, and I'm the host of the live stream, and I'm presenting from just outside of Washington, D.C. area in Alexandria, Virginia. If you are watching live, please feel free to introduce yourself, tell us where you're from, and even if you're watching it offline, you could introduce yourself in the comments. It's always fascinating to see different people from all over the world on the live stream. So with that, we will go ahead and get started. All right, so we see from Learn with Steven says, thank you, Greg, for your help with the last live event. I went in and put all my MIDI settings to default, downloaded and installed Steinberg tools and MX DSP drivers, and everything works great. So, all right, thanks for letting us know, Steven. All right, well, always great to see Brian Sawyer Sr. checking in from Crystal Coast of North Carolina. Glad you can make it today. We have Uno Memento, who's checking in from Finland, and he's the number 13 like this time. So if you do learn a new tip or trick, or you just want to hit the like button because you like the live streams, feel free to do that. And it allows us to continue offering these services to people. All right, so we see Tommy C wishing me a happy Friday. Happy Friday back to you. All right, and we're great to see Michael Marshall checking in from Somerset in the UK. We have Jan checking in from Stockholm, Sweden. All right, so we have a question from Endry Hoxha. It says, is Cubase heavy on CPU? So it's going to be very efficient on your CPU, but there's a lot of factors that could be going on with this. So sometimes you may get CPU spikes if something is interrupting the audio workflow. So if you open up your performance meter and we go to your studio menu, you'll see your audio performance meter. And this isn't a CPU performance meter, but we can think of this as more as an audio performance meter. If you see certain little spikes here or there, that could indicate, like while you're kind of idle, that could indicate that maybe there's another process. And we see this on a Windows platform periodically, often with like NVIDIA video display drivers, that they could, and other components can be guilty of this as well, where you may see just a little spike periodically, and that could kind of indicate that while Cubase is running, something else is kind of interrupting the audio performance quality. So there's a lot of stuff where Cubase is going to be optimized for multi-core processors on the Mac OS platform. It's Apple Silicon native, so you get great performance. Another thing that could not be as obvious if you go to, let's say, a virtual instrument. Depending on the instrument, sometimes most virtual instruments will work in a way that one virtual instrument will use one CPU core. So if you have one instrument, so let's say if we have one instrument and we have 16 different sounds in that, and you notice that your CPU usage is high, it could be that this is taxing one CPU core too much. So Hallian Sonic and other Steinberg programs, we can come over here and we could activate multi-core for like a multi-timbral instrument. So we could do that, but not a lot of instruments will scale across different CPU cores. So it may look like it's heavy if you're running like a Hallian Sonic and you have 16 different sounds loaded in one instance because you're overloading that one particular processor. But I would say overall that Cubase is very efficient when running on your systems and your CPU. All right, so we see a question from Dallas LaRue. I'm thinking of buying immersive virtual studios. It's something like SonarWorks. Is it better for mixing on headphones? So what it's going to allow you to do is when you're mixing with headphones, it's going to basically allow you to take advantage of the, basically the different recording environments have been modeled by in the plugin. So you could have, the, Alan Meyerson's room, and you could also have, I'm trying to remember the mastering studio's name. So instead of having your speakers in your environment, once you put the headphones on and you kind of do like the HRTF scan, which is basically taking a picture of your ear, at that point it will, simulate being in a known high quality environment. So I think SonarWorks will do kind of room correction for your particular, monitors, but this is really kind of designed for headphone mixes and not only for stereo, but for doing Dolby Atmos mixed with the Immerse Virtual Studio. All right, always wonderful to see Stefan checking in from Sweden, and we also see Soren checking in from Sweden. He'll be here for a short moment, and he's going to be working with Cubase and return a bit later. Okay, so we have a question from Zephaniah from Detroit, I believe. How can I create a harmony track without singing using Artist 10 on PC? All right, so really all you would need to do is, let me just show a track where we could do this. So one is probably figuring out what the chords are would be, one of the first things that you could do. So I'll just come over here. Let's open up a particular project. And I think that this is now in artist version. So let me just open this up. Just make sure how to do it here. So I know that all the very audio features were kind of brought into Cubase Artist with version 12. But let's say if I have a chord track and I want to take this particular my piano part, I'm going to say create chords from events. So we now have a chord track. So if it's going to kind of function in Cubase Artist, I'll show you how you can do it in the Pro version. But let's say, all right, so I'm going to just select this particular range, and if it, kind of goes snaps, I'm going to turn my snap off and say, okay, I want to take, we'll just find that range again. All right, so I'm going to just take that particular phrase, and once we know what the chords are, see if this is, I'm not absolutely sure that this is an artist, but if it is, this is where you would find it. You go to your audio menu and you'll see generate harmony voices, and I'll say let's do 2 harmony voices, and we'll come over here. I'll just kind of bring the volume of these down just a little bit. So that's how you could do it. So select kind of the range that you want once you have the chord track, so it knows how to generate the harmonies correctly for the part. You could enter that manually, drag an audio file to a chord track, or drag a MIDI track with chords, and then go to your audio menu once you've selected the range, and then come over here to generate harmony voices. All right, so we see Jan K. Jan's just asking if we could see him. So yeah, we could see your comments there, Jan. All right, so we see Indri just ask, I want to know something about Cubase. How about switch the instruments from mono to stereo with just one click, or does it have any option or shortcut to do that? So, generally the instrument tracks are going to be based on whatever output is being generated by the instrument. The vast majority of instruments will be set up as a stereo output, and that's kind of what you're hearing. If you really wanted it to, be in mono, so let's say I want to take this piano part. So, and I want this to be in mono instead of stereo. I could right click here. Let's go to, I'm going to add a track. All right, I have this going out of my, I'll open up my instrument track. So we'll come over here to the grand. So I'm going to add a group channel. And I'm going to make this a mono group channel. All right. And now what I want to do is to route this to my mono group. And now it's going to be coming in stereo. Now, if my instrument had a mono output, I could choose for it to be a mono output. But again, the vast majority of instruments are going to output stereo, so we could take that stereo output and route it to a mono group if you need it to be mono. All right, so we see a question from Uno Memento, how to bypass all insert effects on all tracks at the same time. So if you're in the large scale mixer, if you hit F3, if you come over here, let's say you have inserts, and you may see this, if you don't see like inserts, EQ, channel strip, sends here, these will be under the settings for, I believe it's called state buttons. So what you could do now is, if you have a lot of inserts, just come over here. You could bypass the inserts, EQs, channel strip, and send all directly from the main mixer. So if you go into the large mixer, make sure that you have the state buttons active. Then you'll see these. Then you could just bypass all your inserts, EQs, channel strip, and send, like so. All right, so we have a question from Tommy C. Says, hey Greg, can you please explain how to time stretch audio and detail? Let's say I create a MIDI part with Hallian, then render it to audio. How could I time stretch it? All right, so there's a number of ways of taking, I'll just do a small section of my piano part here. So let's say I want to take this piano part, and I'm just going to render in place this particular piano part. So let's say we render in place with our settings. Okay, so we have our audio file directly rendered here. So if I wanted to, the easiest way to do time stretching is just to, if you go to your object selection tool, or you could just put it into sizing applies time stretch. So you can say, okay, I need that to fit into that amount of space, and that will automatically time compress that file to automatically fit into that amount of time. You could also, if you wanted to take a different approach or more of an offline process, you could select the event, go to audio, to processes, and you will see time stretch. And then you could set to time stretch by number of bars and beats, by seconds, or by samples. So you could just do time stretching directly there as well. So so either switch this mode to sizing applies time stretch, and as you move the bottom handles, that will do time compression, or go to audio, to processes, to time stretch, and then you could set in BPM, seconds, or samples for your time stretching value right there. All right, so we have Rob says he always enjoys learning new Cubase functions, and that he's watching from Denver today. So thanks for joining us. All right, so we see question from Lars, who asks, and Lars asks, hi, could you please explain how to best tune snares or kicks with Cubase stock plugins? So I'm not sure if it's more for, so one of the things that you could do is, if we have, let's say if it's like an acoustic drum recording, and we, so if it's just an audio recording here, so let's say, okay, I want to take my kicks on this. All right, so now if I select these three files, one of the things you do is just from the info line, we could transpose. So that's down an octave. Let's move it back to our normal pitch. And if we wanted to go up an octave, or back down, or that's our normal pitch and down one octave. Now, if it was like a virtual instrument or sample, What you could do is as you're playing, so say if we have like Groove Agent, at this point we could choose to click on, just clear my throat. So if we just click directly on, we could see coarse tuning, and we could adjust our tuning in semitones. So even if you drag a sample, here we could go up an octave, down an octave, or anywhere in between. And if we wanted this to be set not so, and that's for the selected pad. So if I wanted to tune my snare up, and we have coarse tuning, which is in semitones, and then we also have cents here. So if it's a sample based thing, you could drag the sample right in. If it's an audio file, you could just simply come over with the file selected, choose to say, okay, I want to select, we can see our transpose, and then we have fine tune. So this will be semitones, and this will be cents. All right, so we see from Pylon Records, great to see you back. Hi, Greg and everyone. This is only a stream I look forward to. Greg, is there a way to ping external instruments, not external effects like synths, samplers, etc., so all the instruments are in sync? So, what happens is Cubase is going to send the MIDI information out, and it's going to send, send a particular MIDI information out. And each hardware instrument, can vary tremendously in how they respond to incoming MIDI data. So, if it was common, I remember talking with composer Trevor Morris, and he was just kind of reminiscing. He's like, "Yeah, I miss the old days when all my MIDI was 8 to 12 milliseconds out of time all the time." Because by the time the MIDI goes out to the device, we could be very used to kind of a virtual world. But one thing you could do, and you may notice that as you send it out, the MIDI driver can play a big part of the timing of that. A lot of times the newer MIDI drivers will kind of go with the system timestamp. So if you're on Windows, you may go to if you go to your device, your studio setup, and go to MIDI port setup here, at this point, you'll see like a use system timestamp or ignore port filter. So if you're running into problems with that, try toggling those settings. If by time that the MIDI is going out that it's going to be delayed, one of the things that you can do, and what I used to do in the old days is, put an audio click and have the Cubase click and record it. And then you may look at this and say, okay, by the time we rendered this file of these notes that were perfectly on time, just put in something like quarter notes. So say, okay, I want to come here, I want to put in quarter notes on my kick, and I want to only, render those, and then you could measure, render just the kicks. So I'll just do this over again here. Okay. All right, so, just do like a couple of measures of kicks on the downbeat, record it as an audio file. So once we render that particular audio file, at that point, really all you would have to do is as you play, you could see, as you you hit play, record it as an audio file to your external instrument. And then you could, look at where that event starts, and then you could pretty much calculate. I'll just try to recreate this here. So say I recorded the audio file. Let me just, excuse me, may have to get a little glass of water. But if I've recorded the audio file at this point, I'll just simulate it. So hit play, and what you want to do is figure out how much it's out of time. So in some older synths will be more out of time, the more polyphony that they're using, just because they have a processor as well. So it may not be a particular fixed value. So I'm going to just come over here. We'll render in place. All right, I just had it set. And then once you kind of look at, we'll just say we're going to look at our waveform here, figure out. So let's say at this point, let's say your downbeat was here. If you grab the range selection tool and let's say that this event, I'll just take it off here. So let's say your rendered MIDI event that should have been perfectly on time is this much late. What you could do is I'll just take my snap off and I'll select from the transient to the downbeat here. And we can say, okay, this is 46 milliseconds. Now I'm going to right click and put it into seconds. And then we could see that this is going to be 57 milliseconds, let's say. Now, once you have that done for your MIDI part, you can now just come in here and you'll see let's see if it's on just the MIDI. Just add a new instrument track, or we'll add a MIDI track rather, sorry. Let's see if we could adjust. All right, so now that we have a MIDI track, I could just come over here and say shift this back minus 57 milliseconds, and then that should play perfectly in time. So, Cubase is sending the MIDI out. Once Cubase sends it out, how your MIDI interface, how the device reacts to it is kind of out of Cubase's control. But this is a way that you could record it back in, figure out the difference in the timing, and then just simply shift the MIDI track earlier so that it has the same type of feel as virtual instruments. All right, so we have King Salvage saying hello, and we have Dave Glick. Always wonderful to see Dave from Northern Virginia as well. And from McLean, hope you're doing well, Dave. All right, so we see from InDrop, hi Greg, is it possible to sell a Groove Agent expansion pack that I don't use? I think you'd have to refer to the license transfer, and it may be different depending on if it's an license license-based, or if it's running on the Steinberg licensing. So those procedures may be different depending upon which licensing that you're using. All right, so we see John Costigan from Kenosha, Wisconsin, wishing a happy Friday to me and to everyone on the live stream. All right. Okay, so we see from Mass to LBC, Greg, how can I change the order of the output channels in the mixer? All right, so let's say I have a number of output channels here. So I will just create some more output channels. So we'll come here and say, okay, I want to add stereo bus. And let's add couple more stereo buses here. Okay, so now we have 5 stereo outs. All right, so if we just place these outputs, what I'm going to do is just kind of click on the right button temporarily for these, and then once we have once they are kind of automated, right? We don't have to write any automation, just kind of turn those on. Then we can turn them off. But now they show up in our input-output folders. So if I wanted stereo out 3 to come right after stereo out 2, I could just kind of drag these particular out, change the order of those. So if I want stereo out here to be last, just drag it down, and then we could, it looks like it's still going to be maybe the same order here. And it looks like it may be fixed based upon the order that they are added. So let me just try that one more time. Yeah, so we can change the order here on the project window, but it's still gonna, looks like it's still kind of fixed by the number of the output channels in the mixer. Sorry about that. All right, so we see from Ace Amadeus, great to see you on the live stream. Hi, Greg, I have a 24-bit project. If I import some 16-bit files, is it better to say yes to convert to 24-bit, or better to use the dithering plugin in Mix Area to get the best stereo render? Thanks. So, unless, if you are playing the 16-bit file, Cubase can play, multiple bit depths within the same project. So it could have a 16-bit, a 24-bit, and a 32-bit all within the same project. As soon as you alter, unless you're not going to get any sonic benefits of converting it to 24-bit. But as soon as it's in a project and you've changed it in any way, whether it's, increasing the gain by 1/1000th of a dB, applying an EQ, at that point, everything is in the 32-bit floating point, because everything gets processed in 32-bit or 64-bit floating point precision based upon your selection. Once that is being done, it will take advantage of all the processing engines, and so you're not going to gain anything by converting a 16-bit file into 24-bit and doing your mastering, and like when you do your stereo mix down. So just, there's no need to do it. It's not going to change quality, but because Cubase is already processing everything at 32 or 64-bit floating point in its own mix engine. All right, wonderful to see Jovanovic 3D from Slovenia. Glad you can make it today. All right. All right, so we see, all right, so we have a question. Hi, Greg, how do you consolidate a clip that has MIDI notes or multiple audio data to keep only the notes or audio you're seeing and eliminate all the rest that is not highlighted within the clip? Okay. Okay, so this sounds like maybe it's going to be dealing with, let's say, I'll take this event here, I'll move it. All right, so this sounds like maybe it's a delete overlaps function that you're looking for. So this will work for both audio and MIDI. So let's say when I drag over two events, we see that we have this these diagonal lines indicating that we have particular events that are overlapping. So if I wanted this file to play, I could click here and we could choose which file is active. But we could switch back and forth between the different overlapping data. But if we don't want those events to overlap and we just want it to be deleted, whether it's audio or MIDI, we could go to our preferences and we'll go to editing. And we want to, if you activate delete overlaps, so apply. So now as soon as I drag this event over, it basically just, instead of it overlapping those events, and I'll just change the color here to make it, just to illustrate. I drag this over top. The beginning of the green event will be deleted, and then we won't have any overlapping data. So if we're on a MIDI track, we would have, basically this same concept here. So I want to just put on so if we have kind of on different MIDI events, I'll make this a little larger. And we could have basically the same exact concept once we have delete overlap. So let me know if that's kind of what you want to do, instead of just to get rid of the events when they're overlapping. So let me know if that is kind of what you want to do. So again, go to editing, to preferences to editing rather, and then enable delete overlaps. Let me know if that's what you want. So we see from Ace Amadeus, hi Greg, hope you're doing well. Could you please explain and show an example of audio warp usage? Thanks. So let's say, like in our example here, our bass player didn't have the best timing. So like, and they were consistently coming in early or late in the mix. So I'm going to switch to my warp tool to free warp. And I'm going to just come over here and let's just drop some warp markers. We could do this kind of automatically a couple different ways. But let's say we're here. All right, so let's say, a couple of bass notes were early or late. So now that we have our warp markers, when you kind of hover just to the right, you'll see kind of this vertical line to the left of the warping tool. When that line is over an event, that will turn white. So now I can say, okay, I want this to actually, and we're going to enable snap, and we'll say we want it to snap to the beat. So I can say I need this event to actually just come here and snap directly to the beat. So I could just move the timing of different notes. So it's really great if someone's just like a little hair early or hair late. We can just come over here and choose to snap the different events so that it can just say, okay, this needs to be on beat, this needs to be on beat right there. So one of the things that you want to do if you want to move a point is make sure that you have a point before or after. Because if you just have a single point, and make sure if it seems like, oh, why don't I see the L lines, you have to kind of zoom in to a certain degree. So if I say I want this point over to the left, and you'll see that as I move this point over to the left, it's, without another anchor point, everything beyond that to the next anchor point will be stretching. So you may want to just come on over here and say, okay, now I want to adjust this. I don't want to affect this part or this part, but I could just come over here and adjust the timing of that part. So that's kind of what audio warping allows you to do, kind of fix timing irregularities pretty easily. All right, wonderful to see Value checking in from Vienna. He's doing a beat making session. He's going to follow with half an ear. So maybe you could spare one whole ear for us. All right. Always great to see Captain Energy Music from outside Harrisburg, Pennsylvania. Thanks for joining us. As well as wonderful to see Matt Elston from London. All right, so we see from Secret Studios is Jay in Connecticut. Question: If I'm using an outboard compressor without built-in sidechain, but routing through Nuendo Cubase to apply on Cubase event, is it possible to trigger a virtual sidechain? So we could do. You'd probably need to have the hardware compressor would probably need to have some kind of sidechain input. Ideally, I guess you could, because you're going to be compressing one source that the hardware compressor is, designed to process, and another source that's going to be feeding the input of that. So your hardware compressor, to do kind of side chaining, we can get audio out through like through an output to feed an external sidechain. But if your if your hardware compressor doesn't have the ability of doing sidechaining, I don't know of a virtual way to kind of simulate that, because it would need to have like a secondary input to do the sidechaining. So, and I think that's just going to be, perhaps a limitation of your hardware compressor. It doesn't have a sidechain input, but even an Alesis 3630 has a sidechain input. So a lot of compressors do. All right, so we have Spittoon Dudes, whose question is it possible to import a song from another DAW into Cubase, audio, or MIDI? So what a lot of people will use, for MIDI information, it's going to be probably standard MIDI files. What people will do for DAWs is you could import and export AAF files is the most common. This isn't going to carry over plugins. It isn't going to carry over like EQ settings and translate that. That's all going to be kind of unique and independent to each program. But if you wanted to, import, what a lot of people will do is just simply generate a MIDI file and take all of the audio, and I'll just revert this, and kind of often they do what is called creating stems, where there are equal length audio files on, so that when you import and we could export stems inside of Cubase, or we could just take equal length audio files, and once you have the audio files, we could just say, let's go to edit, and we will choose, move to origin, and that will automatically place the audio files at their timestamp position. But again, it's not going to carry over a lot of mixer settings. You could get the MIDI information in, the audio information in, but it's not going. I don't think any of the DAWs will carry over you know, plugins and EQs and compressors and settings like that. All right. So wonderful to see Pablo on from Galicia, España, the wonderful drummer of Hot Mess. He's on a tour bus right now. So wonderful to see Pablo. Everyone's going to be happy to see Pablo on. All right, so we see from Best Korean Jesus, hey Greg, how could you go about routing a track to record the effects output only? All right, so let me just, we'll come over here. Let's take this. So let's take this project. So let's say I want to print just the reverb of this track. Okay, so let's go ahead and we'll just listen to not a sound, tell me why. All right, so let's say we want to now, so we have our effects. Something's wrong. So I'm going to take this effect and let's route this effect to a group channel. And we'll make it stereo. All right, and I will now come over here and let's add an audio track and we'll set its input to our reverb return channel. Right. How can I feel you? All right. Just check my. Okay, so I'm going to set this to. May not allow me. All right, because I don't think that if we set this up, we don't see the reverb return channel. So one way to do it also, and this might be perhaps even an easier way, is let's say I have my, I'll revert this to kind of get you to the same spot, but let me just revert this so we'll take it from scratch. So, and this way we don't have to create kind of a feedback loop, which Cubase tries to avoid. All right, so say you stare at the ground, not a sound, tell me why something's wrong, we can't go on living. All right, so I'm just going to take All right, so now what I'm going to do is let's do an export audio mixdown. And I only want to have my effects channel. And at this point, I'm going to create an audio track. And we'll say, let's export audio. And I have it just set up in the left and right locators here. So now as we listen to this, we're just going to have. So that's just the reverb channel. So instead of like necessarily doing routing, what we're able to do now is to say export audio mixdown, just select the reverb channel. And then at that point, it'll just render that particular reverb as its own special isolated track. So let me know if that'll work for you, Best Green Jesus. Great to see you on the live stream. All right, so we see just a question. Sometimes MIDI notes don't want to align with the grid you're choosing while dragging it in. So instead of clicking quantize or create a new note in the exact grid, is there a way to fix it forever? All right, so let's go ahead and I'll just take some MIDI notes here. So let's go ahead. All right, so it could be, so let's say we have, I want to activate snap, and let's say I'm going to choose my quantized value here to be whole note. So now as I move notes, these notes will move directly to the particular value. As we move it, it's just going to snap. Now, within Cubase, and especially let's say we look at this in our in-place editor, just to kind of show. All right, so we could have kind of different grids. So, we could have one grid for visual representation and another grid that's set up for, just make sure this is activated here. All right, so let's say we have, all right, so we now have it set to grid. And I think if we go over here, that we could choose a different grid type. I may have to activate it here. All right, let me just turn off a couple. But I'll just do it on another project here real quick and see if I get it to you. But you could have the grid set for one value for editing and have a different display grid. See if I have. I'm just having a brain cramp on it. Let me just, oh, maybe it's, okay. So if you go to nudge, you can see link to grid. All right, so let's say I am editing my MIDI notes here. All right, and I'll just synchronize these. Okay, and I will just zoom so we can see this. All right, so now we have it linked to grid. So if I have this set to bars and beats, this can automatically snap to my bars and beats. So let's say I could come here and snap, but we could also say I want my grid editing to be done in seconds. So as I nudge events, that we could nudge events that are going to be done in seconds but not on the grid. So check your nudge settings here and make sure that one, you actually have it set, to link to grid. So, but you could have, again, different, so you could link it to the primary time display or link it, so as you're doing snap editing. But also check your grid settings and make sure that, one, it's set to grid here and it's not set to events or grid relative. So, check to make sure that as you're doing your snap, that here it says grid only. So, and try that. And also, if you're doing it from the project window under the nudging, here you could make sure that the nudging is, if we choose it not to link to the time, we could have independent nudging for the primary time display. Could be a different time factor than the nudging. So check those two things. And if you could just let me know kind of what your grid is set to, that would be great. All right. All right, so we see from Jovanovic 3D, he asks, newbie question, Nuendo is somewhat quiet. I have to boost a control room level to 8 to just hear Nuendo tracks properly at 0. Strange since YouTube and Wind Audio is normal. Any idea why? So, realize that the audio level from your Windows settings in YouTube is going to be completely independent of what's going on in Cubase. So one of the things that you could always do in a scenario like this, if you think, let's simplify the process, we'll create a new audio track, create a new project, add an audio track. At this point, we're going to, we'll go to my mix console. On this track, I'm going to add an insert, and one of the inserts that you can add is going to be found under tools, is just a test tone generator. So what we want to do here is, okay, so we have this set to output 440 hertz at -12. So we see -12 here, we also see -12. If we're set to 0 dB here, if we're set to 0 dB here, we're going to see -12 on our output. So if we open up, let's say Supervision, we'll see that, that we're going to have kind of that consistent level. So make sure, try just doing a very simple test tone and see if you, on the track, if that's the same level as the output. So if you have to kind of crank your control room, make sure your master fader isn't turned down. Sometimes people will have talkback turned on, and that will, so let's say if we're playing, that could attenuate your talkback, the gain of the project if talkback is turned on. But, try just a very simple test to see, because this way what the level is. It's going to be consistent. It's basically just a software oscillator. And if it's going in through, your monitoring source or, what is going on. But, just see if you put that plug-in on a track and just do a project with one track, add that plug-in, see if you have the same output gain here, see if you have the same output gain in the control room. And then those should all be kind of lined up for you. But check that first. But, generally Nuendo isn't quiet per se. So give that a try. I see Pablo just saying Greg needs some mocha. So if I have a mocha, then I would have to stop in like an hour or so to use the restroom. So I try not to drink too much before because I have to go for 4 hours. All right. All right, so we see Lars asks, could you please explain how to fastest multiply a single, for example, kick sample, so it copies on every 8th or 16th note? Okay, so I'm going to come over here. Let's just find a quick kick sample. All right, let me just... Okay, so let's say I want to take this kick. All right, so I'm going to just drag it into my project window. All right, so let's see if I did it. All right, so I'm just going to double click, and we have our kick file, or kick sample entered here. All right, so I'm going to just come over here. So let's say I want on 8th notes. So we'll come listen to our click with our kick. All right, so what I want to do is we can see that here we're going to have our different beats, our grid line. So what I want to do is just to drag this out, and we want this particular event to line up onto the grid. So let's say I have, okay, so let's say that's our 8th notes. I'm going to switch tools to my range selection tool. And now I'm going to just hit Control or Command plus the letter D. And that's how you could just, so once you have kind of the samples placed, so if you wanted this to be like a 4 on the floor kind of thing, I could just hold down the Alt key, and let's say I just turn on my grid so we could snap to the grid. Let me just switch my object selection tool back to normal. And then we're going to, instead of bar, we'll just say we're going to put this on the beat. And again, I could just come here, say, okay, hold down my Alt or Option key, and then select the range, and then boom, and we listen, and we have 4 on the floor. So, and you could change your beat to quantized value, have that set for 8th, 16th, 8-note triplets, whatever value you want. So let me know if that's helpful for you. Let's see, Pablo had his revelation, so that's good. All right. So we see from DJ Mad, any news on Cubase 13? So no public information yet. You know, Steinberg isn't the type of company that kind of teases before a release. So generally when it's ready to ship and it's available to the market and available for users, that's when it'll be announced. So kind of, you know, avoids the anticipation factor. All right. All right, so we see a question from Sound Familiar Studios. Hey crew, been a while. Just got 12 Pro. How do you mix down and send stems? So if we have a project, it's really all you'd have to do is, let's say, you know, I wanted to send equal length audio files or stems to someone. So let's say I have a bunch of edits here. We can see on the guitar parts. And if I wanted to consolidate all these, what we would do is go to our export to audio mixdown. We would want to select multiple. Here we can say, okay, I want to include my stereo out. I want to have all of my audio tracks, all of my virtual instrument tracks. And at this point, what we could do is we could choose what level of processing we want on it. Do we want it to be dry? Do we want it to include the inserts and channel strip? And that would include the EQ. Do we want it to include sends? Do we want to have the master effects automatically carried over into it as well? So, and at that point, you could just hit export audio. This will make all of our audio files be equal length so that anyone in any other program could simply import them and start them all at the same time and have all the files needed. All right, so we see question, will come Eagle also to e-licensing? So I believe Eagle is the piano sound that is part of Hallian. So that is, so it's not a separate purchase, but it's just a sound directly within Hallian, or I believe it's in kind of the, if you have, it doesn't come with the, the free version of Hallian Sonic, but it's already working under the licensing system, but it may need to be running in Hallian, or if you have the older sounds as well. So, but it's just one of the, I don't think it's sold separately, so it's just going to, so it's just going to be licensed directly inside of Hallian itself. All right, so Zounds by Timo asks, how would one search for a specific instrument in Cubase, for example, fiddle? Thanks, Greg. So if you just come over, you could go to your media bay. So if you wanted to just say, okay, I want to go for VST instruments, and if you wanted to come over here and say, okay, I'm looking for, violin. We could just you could search within particular instruments, or if you go to like the full media bay here, you say, let's go look at VST sound, and okay, I want to look for, instrument, like plug-in presets. So let's say, okay, now let's just come over here, violin, and then you could see a number of different violins. I'm looking for, Rhodes or piano, and you could just see everything that kind of meets your conditions right there. So you could hit F5 and just look at under plugin presets, and then you could search, and if you're doing it within a particular instrument, so let's say, okay, I want to come over and say, okay, let's go to Hallian Sonic, and then I think we could just type in piano, and then you could search for all the different pianos within that particular instrument. So you could search within the instrument on the right hand side zone media bay. All right, so we have Larry B checking in from rainy Brampton in Ontario, Canada. Thanks for joining us. All right, so Tommy C asks, Greg, what's the best way to copy a file and rename it? Just always have a backup, especially when editing vocals. So what I like to do, hang on just 1 second. Someone calling me from Kansas right now. All right. So what I like to do is, let's say if you've done a number of edits at this point, so let's say, okay, I want to come here. So let's say I've done like a lot of vocal edits. I like to come over here and make a new track version, but just do a duplicate track version. And once I have the duplicate track version, I will come over here and just say, okay, let's bounce selection. So we'll replace the events. And then if I want to give it a name, I could say, this is our vocal edit. So now at this point, I have my consolidated track. It's a separate, distinct file, and I come over here and let's say, oh, the vocal is like, oh, I didn't like that one word. You could go immediately back to where you were before, and now we could just have kind of an alternate track version. That could be kind of the consolidation of all the edits, but you could simply go right back over here to where you were before for the edits. So that's how I like to do it and kind of keep it all in the same place. I don't have all sorts of different tracks and which track is the right one, which is, this way it's kind of organized very easily. So let me know if that will work for you. Okay, so we see this question about the clarification about the delete overlaps. So it says the delete overlap answered another problem of mine. Thank you very much. But what I meant, is there a way to keep only the MIDI or audio data that's highlighted within the clip editor and delete the notes outside of it? Okay, so I think I understand. Sorry for misunderstanding. All right, so let's say I have just a whole bunch of notes here. And let's put some notes kind of at the very beginning. All right, so let's say I want to, I have these notes selected and I wanted to get rid of these notes. I'll just move these over so that they're more visually aligned. Just do this. All right, so if I want to, within the editor, I could come here, let's select these notes, and then if we go to select, I think there's an invert, and then delete, so you could do that. So if you want to do it within the editor, if you want to do it on the project level, what you could do is select with the range tool, so just use the range tool, select, and if you go to edit to range and choose crop. So this way you can say, oh, I just like this. I want to get rid of everything after, everything before, but I only want to keep this selected range. Again, go to edit to range to crop, and then everything else will be kind of eradicated for you. So let me know if that's helpful. So again, just select the range, go to edit, range, crop. Or within the MIDI editor, you could just invert, go to edit, select, invert, and delete. Just hit the delete key. So let me know if that's helpful, and sorry for misunderstanding, and thank you for the clarification. All right, so we see from Dylan, hi Greg, wondering how to delete all selected track inserts with a key command. All right, so let me just jump to another project here. If you've learned something new, make sure that you do hit the like button and subscribe to the channel if you haven't done that. All right. All right, so say I go to this track and we have a number of, let's see, one of my tracks I think I have. All right, so say I have inserts on this track. All right, so if we go to our inserts here, so if you wanted to, so I think that we could clear all the inserts. So I think some people will, because we can come over. All right. So to remove all the inserts, let me see if there's, I think we could So you could reset the track, but that would reset everything. I think that we have the insert here. And I know what some people do is just kind of drag the inserts out, but you could, right click, you could bypass the inserts here, all the inserts, but if you wanted to delete them, you probably could, if you do an effects chain preset. So let's just see if there's an empty one. So I will save this. Let's say empty. And then you could just have an empty track preset. So if you have like 16 and you don't want to move each one, maybe just load up an effects chain preset, and that way that won't affect your EQs and channel fader, volume, and panning like a reset would. All right, always wonderful to see Peter from Montreal. Thanks for joining us today. Great to see Daniela Tocan from Bochum. And Danielle's asking, today's a Zoom session, so it'll be Tuesday will be the Zoom session, so that'll be the 29th. That'll be the last live stream of the month. All right. So I just see I opened a case back on the 11th regarding MIDI timing issues with Halion 701 and Bitwig Studio 5 and have not received a reply. What should I do? So if you want to send the case to me, you could email it to me at clubcubase@steinberg.de if you have the case number. So, I know that depending on where the case is sent to, if you do it in the United States, it goes to the United States Support Department, which is different than the global support department. So if you want to email me the case number and what country you submitted it from, I could send it. I could see if I could get it figured out for you. So tell me the case number, and if you have any information on what country it was submitted from, because different distributors do support in different countries. All right, so we see Randy Lee from Texas and Rude Green from South UK. Thanks for being here. All right, and we see, thank you so much for the nudge tip. That was the problem for the grid. That's great. Thanks for letting me know. Always wonderful to see Michael Teams from Weatherford, Texas. Glad you can make it. Hope you're doing okay in the heat. All right, and Patrick Emanuel A. from India. So glad to see you as well. All right, my chat field just jumped. All right. All right. You see John Costigan thanking Jazz Dude for posting probably Windows 10 the bloat videos. So I'll check those out. All right, so we see from Secret Studios, it says hitting a snag, routing To a new summing mixer, all metering reflects that all signal chain segments are receiving signal. However, the stereo out is for some reason not playing the sum line ins. Check out with, I'm not sure, I think you might be running an RME interface if memory serves. I'm not fully confident in my memory with that. But check to make sure if you have like direct monitoring turned on, and see if you go, and it could be done in like the software mixer for the device, or maybe even coming here to selecting your audio interface, and if you have direct monitoring enabled, try toggling that. But it seems like, and make sure that you have the output of the summing mixer going back into an input of your audio interface as well, or if I'm not sure if it's going to output directly to your monitoring source or if it's being fed back into Cubase. But make sure that you probably have to do like a hardware, cable patch to get that to carry over. Okay. All right, so we see from values, this question, I have Eagle in Hallian Sonic SE, but it's the only one of the licenses that didn't get the new licensing update. Is it a bug? So, make sure that you have, if you had a, like previously it was Hallian Sonic 3 that came with a library. And then we had Hallian Sonic SE, that was the player that came with Cubase. The Eagle came with the add-on sale of, so if you had the Hallian Sonic 3, or if you kind of bought, I forget the exact name that they use for it, but there are like where you could buy the sounds for Hallian Sonic 3 and run it in Hallian Sonic 7, or if you had a trial version of Hallian as well. And one other thing to do is, the older one may check for the e-licenser, but if you have, depending on, I'm not sure if you have Hallian 7 or, Absolute, but make sure that when you go to your Steinberg download assistant that you update it, the particular version. So you might have to reinstall. Let's see if we get this open quickly. But, go to like the Hallian 7 downloads, see what licenses you have. Because the Eagle didn't come with Hallian Sonic SE3. It could play back through Hallian Sonic SE3 if you had it. But let's say if we come over here to our VST instruments, and we'll scroll down to H's. All right, and then you have the Hallian Sonic 7 collection. So in here, I think that you would have all of this is where you would have the Eagle, but the Eagle wasn't compatible with Hallian Sonic SE3 unless you purchased this collection or a previous like Hallian license. All right. All right, so we see Sound Familiar Studios says, awesome. Thank you, Greg. All right, you're welcome. All right. Everyone's happy to see Pablo back on the live stream while he's on the tour bus. All right, so we see Paul Jones says, "Hi Greg, great work in the live stream. Just taking a plunge and upgraded from Cubase 11 Pro to Pro 12. So congratulations on the update." And he's from Pembrokeshire in Wales. Thanks for being on the live stream today. All right, wonderful to see Nick from Essex in the UK. You don't have to apologize for being late, but we're glad that you hit the like button. You see Nick giving a coffee to Pablo. So sneaky of you, Nick. All right. All right, so we have a question from Spencer B. Hi, Greg. I'm having an issue when bringing loops from Media Bay. In some cases, they come in not matching the BPM of the current song. They demo fine, but when I apply them, they are off. So, if you're bringing in loops from Media Bay, what you want to do is, as you drag them in, if it's not matching the tempo, all you would need to do is to select the particular event and make sure that it's set to musical mode. So that's, so anytime that you're going to have a loop, just come over and make sure that it's going to be set for musical mode. And then as we do this, we can see that it's automatically going to fit right there. So again, select the events and right on the info line, right up here, just make sure they're in a musical mode. Then that loop will follow the tempo of your project in a parasitic manner. All right, so we see from Tommy C. Hi, Greg. Is there a way to set up a diatonic chord progressions for every key on the chord pads? All right, so let's come over here to the chord pads. All right, so and we'll go to our presets. So if we just come over here, click here. So we'll say, let's load chord pads preset. So you'll see like the little presets here. And then you could see that it's already going to have like, okay, major key of A. If I wanted to come over here and load different presets, again, just kind of come over, load, and you'll see like every major and minor keys just as presets right there. So that's all you would have to do. So again, just a third icon down here in this row 4, load a chord pad preset, and then you'll see all the major and minor diatonic presets right there. So you can make your own if you want, but Steinberg is already nice enough to do that for you. Okay, Michael Teams wants people to whacketh thou like button. Yeah, and with value, I just see, okay, thanks, Greg. You'll try reinstalling the Eagle from the download assistant. So if you had the older one, it may just need to, like re-download it to look under the Steinberg licensing and not the e-licenser. So, all right, wonderful to see Steve Leeds on. Glad you could join us this afternoon. Pablo just has a great comment that musical mode is your friend. All right, so we have Uno Memento says, are there any simply rules for gain stage? The simple concept is try not to, if you're thinking of gain staging, the one thing you don't want to do is to try to make up gain artificially somewhere else. So if we have your track here and your track is really low and then you're sending it to a group and you have to boost the group really high and you're still not getting enough sound out of it, so then maybe in a group you come over here and add more gain in the pre-section. So, try to record with respectable levels, and the whole, I think, as a rule of thumb, the simple rule is not to try to have to, radically boost or cut the gain at any stage. So when people get into problems is when they try to, maybe they didn't record something with a decent amount of amplitude or signal or gain going into the system. Like we look at this, we say, that's a pretty good, healthy level there. Some people, if you record at something like that, and you're like, I don't hear it, so let me artificially, normalize it and boost stuff. So, it could be that if you recorded it at a really low level, that as you try to boost it, that's where you get into problems with gain staging. So, try to keep the gain kind of as, not doing radical jumps, and that will help you in gain staging for your mix. All right, so we see Mark Matson says listening in Chicago. Thanks for all the helpful info. So I used to rep Chicago years and years ago, so been there maybe 100 times or so miss going there. All right. All right, so Rob asks, hi Greg, my Yamaha YC88 accepts program changes from MIDI but is not accepting the bank change. Any ideas how to get both? So there's kind of a nebulous, vague area in the bank change message. So it may be accepting bank changes, but there could be a lot of different bank changes. So sometimes you may have to, let's add a MIDI track, and once you see like your bank selection, you realize that it's not just 1 through 128. So you could actually sometimes try intervals of 128, 256, 384. So often intervals of 128. Sometimes it could be like some of the chord keyboards were 7,164. So this bank value, the program change will be program changes within a particular bank, but you could have 16,000. So you have 16,383 bank change messages. So it's, but try intervals of 128 and just kind of the binary nature of MIDI. And one of those, one of 16,384 of the bank change messages will work. But, try intervals of 128 and see. And you could probably check maybe on a Yamaha keyboard forum as well. All right. I just see something from sounds like Matt. Let me just see if I see maybe a typo that was corrected. Let me See if I see an earlier. All right, so but I just see sounds like Matt just says volume fader instead, but I don't see. Maybe I'm missing the original question, and then I see apologizing for typos. Don't worry about typos. But I'm just scrolling back. Maybe if you want to re-ask the question if I missed it, or if it was perhaps more than 200 characters, sometimes YouTube will cut it off. Sorry about that. Okay, so we see from Eric C. Hello, Greg. Could you show how to use the chord assistant? All right, so let's come over here. Let's go. Let's say I have chords that I want to enter in directly in my. So let's say we'll start off with an F chord and. All right, so let's say now I want to come over here, and so I want to do like a 1-4-5, which is pretty typical. All right, so let's say, I have. All right, and let's put in another kind of typical. All right, so let's. All right, so let's say we have some different chords here, but let's say we wanted to not be so cliche. So we have. All right, so let's say I want to figure out a chord that goes between, in the key of F major between B flat and C. So I could double click and go to the chord assistant. Now our chord assistant, we could actually look at based on musical cadences, and cadences we could think of as kind of chord progressions that kind of get us from one point to another point. We could also look based on common chord tones. We could see that we'll have different levels of complexity. So we can say, okay, I want to have really complex settings or kind of simpler settings. It could give us suggestions. So we can say, okay, let's listen to this. We'll say. So let's come over here, and we could also look at this based on musical proximity. So we can say, okay, we're in the key of F, so these chords are more closely harmonically related than chords out here. And we could also look at this based on a circle of fifths. So we can say, okay, as we go around, so we can say, okay, let's make this. We'll say, okay, let's just come over here, and then we can say, okay, I want it to be, and we could go through and find chords and audition them based around a circle of fifths if we wanted to as well, which is another typical common chord progression. So what the chord assistant is going to allow you to do is, if you just want to try maybe a different chord, it's very easy to get into kind of chord progression ruts. Listen to, most blues music is almost a cliche. A lot of pop music is like a 1-6-4-5, or jazz music will be a 2-5-1. So to get out of different kind of harmonic and chord progression ruts, using the chord assistant can give you some different ideas based on musical criteria, whether you want it to be closely harmonically related or not closely harmonically related, or you could try something that you may not have tried before. So it's easy to say, oh, we should always stick to the key, but, then, like, I was, just playing Sir Duke by Stevie Wonder, which starts in, like, B major, and the second chord's in F minor, which you wouldn't expect. And most people would say, oh, that's the wrong thing to do, but it obviously worked for Stevie Wonder. He's a talented guy, so sings pretty good as well. All right. All right, so we see, hey, Greg, can you show me how to use the piano roll, shortcuts, and customization? All right, so there's kind of a lifetime of stuff you could do in the piano roll editor. Let's take a look at some highlights here. All right, so I'm going to make it kind of full screen. So if you want to, a lot of people don't know that you could, like, zoom vertically just by going onto the piano keyboard and moving that. So if you want it, that to be, just zoom vertically, or if you want it to zoom horizontally, you could hold down the Control or Command key. At a certain point, as we zoom in, we could come over. So when we look at particular notes, like to select notes, we could see our different controllers on the bottom. So we can see our velocity. Here we could have different types of controller lanes. So if we wanted to add, let's say, modulation, I could see my modulation or different MIDI CCs. That will be kind of laid out for me here. So if we wanted to just kind of draw in, just selecting notes, when in doubt, you could right mouse click to access tools. So if you wanted to erase selected notes or take selected notes, just hit the delete key. If you want to come here and diatonically, or let's say move notes by semitone, you could use the up and down arrows. You could also just come over here. If you hold down shift and up, you can go up and down an octave. So that's often helpful if you wanted to copy particular notes. You could hold down the Alt or Option key. Now, if we wanted to, like, just maybe accentuate these notes up, I could move them. But let's say I moved it accidentally in time. So if I hold down my Alt key, I can make a copy. And if I hold down Alt or Option, I could make copy. But if I moved it vertically first, I can now just keep it in the same time frame as well. So let's say I want to take these notes, make them all longer or shorter. We could do stuff like that. So you could elongate notes. We could have that based on the grid as well. So, but lots of great stuff for if you wanted to edit. When you select notes, we could have that automatically select controllers as well. So if you just want to automatically select the controllers as notes are selected, we could come here. If we wanted to take our velocities, I could decrease kind of velocities in particular regions. So let's say I come here. Let me just switch my... So if I have like a group of notes selected and I wanted to take their velocities and simply do kind of a decrescendo, and this is how loud the velocities are kind of played. If I wanted to edit, the velocities to kind of change the dynamics of it. If we go to the center edge here, we could compress or expand the difference of the velocity values. So, anything that you want to select, you can quantize just by hitting the letter Q based on your quantized value that you have set here. So if I want this all to be quantized to 16th notes, we could just select the particular notes and quantize them. But all sorts of great stuff. But if you have any particular things like how could I do this, Nikki Editor, feel free to ask that as well, and be happy to kind of go through that for you. All right. All right, just reading through comments here. Okay. All right, so we see from Got Your, this question is, could you do a quick rundown of how to go from USB dongle to the new online system? My USB dongle is failing here and there, and it's time to make the move. I'm on Cubase Pro 12. So, figure out, you could, if you go to, let's say, the website, you could, make sure that so your Cubase 12 is utilizing the USB, is using the new Steinberg licensing. And you could take a look at products that are using Steinberg licensing. A lot of them have migrated. Some you may need to do an upgrade for, like from Halion 6 to Halion 7. All right, so you can see these are all the programs that are now utilizing the Steinberg licensing. So it's, almost just, just about the entire library, all the libraries and sound sets. So, so Steinberg did a wonderful job kind of migrating all those titles to the new licensing system, as you can see. Now, if you have products that you own, okay, I have this and I'm running on my USB e-licenser. How do I get it onto my, how do I get it onto, migrate it from e-licenser to the Steinberg licensing? We would just kind of go over here. So we'll go to steinberg.net. You want to log on to your My Steinberg account. Second here. And if you have topics, if you have products that can migrate from your e-licenser, so here you could view your e-licenser based products. You could view, what your Steinberg licensing based products are. But you may have vouchers. So if you click on the vouchers, what you could do now is redeem the voucher, and this will basically take the e-licenser license and then migrate it directly to the Steinberg licensing. So you kind of just click on redeem, kind of follow the prompts, and then when you go into the Steinberg activation manager, at that point, you would, your license, once you use the voucher and you migrate it from the e-licenser, and this is software e-license as well as USB e-licenser, you may just see that it may show up under the non-activated, and then just simply click on activate, and at that point, it will be migrated from your e-licenser to the Steinberg licensing system. So just about all the titles are, have migrated over. So like 98, 99% of them. All right. All right, wonderful to see Gerald Ely on. So he says he did a reboot and he is now who he is supposed to be. So that's good. Okay, so we see from Got Yours says maybe he's saying maybe just getting a new dongle, and the question is with the online system, can I have 2 computers on there, like my main studio computer and a laptop, or do I have to unlicense and relicense? So you could have up to 3 different computers on a single license. So so a lot of people have, prefer the new Steinberg licensing. But and some people like the USB e-licenser as well. So, and just see you were saying I have iLock system, so it's not like I'm getting away from the dongle. I'm just sick of this failing. Like today, Cubase came on and Pad Shop was missing. I'm playing back a song. It was like, where are the pads? So, also with Got Your, make sure that so a lot of people have updated to Cubase 12. But they maybe did not install the latest versions of like Pad Shop, Retrolog, Groove Agent SE that utilize the Steinberg licensing. So it could be that perhaps it may still run the older plugins on eLicenser if you didn't install the new ones. All right, so we see from Got Yours, says Greg, thanks for showing that. You're welcome. All right. All right, and again, it sounds like Matt, just make sure that if you have your question again, I'm not sure, I'm just going to scroll back again to see if I missed it. I'll just go back maybe about a half hour in the chat and see. But if you're on, you want to ask your question again. All right, I don't see it on there. Okay, so I think we've reached the end of the questions. I know we had a bunch of questions that were sent in on the via email, so let's go ahead through some of those. All right, always wonderful to see Cubase X on. Glad you could join us. He says, thanks for the brilliant hangout, so you're welcome. All right. All right, so we see from Elijah Brown, hello, Greg, a question for you. If you download a VST, do you make a folder or what do you do? So, if it's a VST instrument or a VST plugin, so VST3 plugins will automatically go into kind of a known folder. VST2 plugins can go into any folder on your system. So, that's good and bad because a lot of companies would install their plugins into particular folders, and then their DAWs didn't go to look into a particular folder to search for that plugin. So with the VST2 plugin, you can install it anywhere you want, whether it's an instrument or an effect. But to find it, if it's not showing up, all you have to do is go to your VST plugin manager. You'll see this little settings cogwheel at the bottom. And then at this point, we could see your VST2 plugin path settings. So what you want to do is just to click here and add the folder where the VST2 plugin is installed. then Cubase will find it. So once that's been added, click on refresh or rescan all, and then that will find the particular folder. So I used to have kind of a generic, like when I had more VST2 plugins, I would put them into like, program file Steinberg VST, and then I may have like different folders for different companies, so I could keep it all organized how I wanted to. With VST3, it's not as necessary because it's automatically going into a known folder where you don't have to look for it. So with flexibility of being able to put it into your own folder becomes the inflexibility of not being able for the programs to find the plugins. So let me know if that helps, Elijah. All right, let's jump to some of the questions that were sent in. Thanks for all the great questions. And again, if you've learned something new, make sure you do hit the like button, and that you also subscribe to the channel. And questions can always be sent in advance to clubcubase@steinberg.de. All right. All right, so I had a question. Hi, Greg. Always very instructive to listen to you. Please, I bought recently electric bass for Hallian and wish I could save my presets, but cannot find the way. Please help. Many thanks once more. All right, so if we have, let's say, our instrument and we're using the electric bass that comes as part of, it's sold separately, but also part of Hallian, or the Absolute collection. So we'll go ahead and just kind of load up electric bass preset here. All right, so let's say if we've modified our settings on the bass. So we come over here. All right, and let's say, okay, we want to switch our pickups. All right, so let's say we want to use the back pickup of jazz bass, bridge only. So now as we play, and let's add kind of a goofy effect. All right, and let's adjust our tone knob so as we play. All right, so we're going to go ahead and save this as a preset. So, make sure that you have the plugin open, and at the top of the plugin, you'll see like the little icon here, and we can say save preset. Let's say call it August 25th, 2023. All right, so now I have my preset. I'll load up a different preset here. All right, so what I want to do now is we'll just say load a preset. All right, and we'll just type in August. All right, and now we load this up, and my tone knob will be down. So that's how you could just save the presets, whether you're in Hallian Sonic or Hallian. Just click just to the right over here and save preset, and then load that same preset. All right, and we had a question about cutting the head and tail based on hit points with the range tool from last live stream. So let me just open up a project so we could show this. And David was kind enough to send me some videos on it. So let me just go over here to this particular file. All right, I'll just move this over here to get away. All right, so we wanted to be able to take a particular file and navigate to our different hit points, and we could do this. So we double click here, we'll look at our hit points. So as we want to navigate, we could just hit kind of Control N to go to the next transient, or Alt or Option N to go to the next transient, next hit point, or Alt B, and this is with the event selected. So and as I mentioned, Dave was kind enough to just send a quick video of this. So let me just clean up some of this stuff just for now, just to make it easier demo-wise. Okay, so the question was like, okay, so we're going to navigate, and he said like when I did it, it worked as expected. So we come over here, let's navigate, and we want to do what's called like a cut head or cut tail. So if you're not familiar with that, it's often used in post. So let's say my cursor position is here. I want to cut everything, the head, like the audio until that particular point, or I want to cut the audio from that point after. So if I want to cut the head, what I would do now is come over, and we would choose, go to range, and we say cut head, and just the beginning of that file snaps off. Now what he was running into was when you do that, it would kind of do it based upon his range selection. So he would navigate, so again, Alt or Option plus N or B, and when he would go to cut tail or cut head, so we'll just come here, range to cut head, it doesn't do it based on the cursor, but on the beginning of the range selection. So he had his range selected here, but what was interesting in his range selection was the range was right on top of itself. So the left and right locators were actually just directly on top of the particular events. And when we, let's say our position is here, and now when I go to, let's say we're navigating, all right, and so let's say we are snapped here. It's, since we have the range tool selected, and the range tool, what it's going to do, it's going to cut it directly from measure 383 as opposed, or 393 as opposed to 394. So we'll come here, and it's because the range is active, and we have the range tool as the active tool. So we'll go to the range, and then we'll, we do our cut head, where we'll have the event selected, of course. So we'll come here and cut head. It will just base it here. Now, one of the things that can contribute to this is when we have the range tool, notice that the cursor immediately, when I have the range tool active, the cursor immediately jumps, the playhead position immediately jumps to the selected range, and the setting that's doing that is if you go to transport, and we have use video follows edit mode turned on. So now when a range is selected, the event doesn't automatically jump to the particular start point of that range. So let's say my playhead is here. I can now do so we'll come here and say, okay, so now we could do a cut head. So we'll select this and do a cut head, cut tail. So we can say cut head, it's going to base it on the cursor position as opposed to the beginning of the range selection. So I think what David needs to do is just go to transport and uncheck use video files edit mode, because that way the range, the playhead immediately goes to the beginning of the selected range. So give that a try, David. Let me know how it works. All right, another question. When will we see Greg Undo Cubase templates? So I think I've done some of the templates that come with it are already part of the program. You know, like templates to me could be kind of very personal, like depending on like, you know, what projects you have. But I think if you go to like production, like where you see like 16 mono, 8 stereo, 16 MIDI groups plus effects. So those are some templates that I created for Cubase. So there are some Cubase templates already there, but you know, I mean, I can make a template that's good for film scoring. If you do hip hop, you're like, oh, this doesn't make any sense, or vice versa, or you're recording rock bands. So I think it's always great to have templates that, you know, suit your needs. And if you want to describe exactly what you want in the template, I'd be happy to create it and share it. Like I know I created a radio production type template that was shared to some different people that we did on a previous live stream. All right, here's the next question. So we see, let me just revert this. All right, and our question we had was kind of how to speed up, and this is from Tuesday's live stream. How can we speed up a particular file, like if you're doing editing for, let's say, a book on tape, where you just have lots of dialogue and you don't want it to necessarily play back at, you know, while you're doing edits. Let's say we're playing back like dialogue editing, and there's a function in Wavelab where we could hit play and the dialogue we could have it play back twice as fast but at the same pitch. And they were wondering if there was a way to, as they're kind of doing dialogue edits, to play back
Scott Dixon
like a dialogue part within Cubase, to have it play back faster at the same pitch without it sounding very chipmunky, where the pitch was going up an octave, and how to kind of mimic that behavior in Cubase. So I just dragged this particular audio file in, and I'm going to, within the pool window, Control or Command plus the letter P, we want to just take this and we want to assign a tempo to this. So this is this file here. So I just assigned 120 beats a minute roughly, and I'm going to place this into musical mode. So when we play this, okay.
So Scott Dixon joining us now, and this is,
okay, so, and we're playing this at normal speed. So what I want to do is to play this twice as fast, just for doing dialogue editing. So what I'm going to do is just to come over, we'll activate our tempo track. So let's say we're going to listen to it at 120 beats a minute.
So Scott Dixon joining us now.
So this is normal speed, 1x playback. Now what I want to do is I'm going to just activate my tempo track, and we could do this a couple different ways. But my tempo track, I want the value to be 240. Okay, so I'm going to take my normal speed.
So Scott Dixon joining us now, and this is, I interviewed him.
And now if I want to play twice as fast, now that this event is in musical mode, I activate my tempo track. My tempo track is set to twice as fast. Doesn't really matter what tempo you type in, as long as your tempo track is twice the value. So we'll play
Scott
this.
Dixon joining us now.
I turn this on.
And this is, I interviewed you in Victory Lane for SportsCenter just moments after you won the race in the championship. I asked you a question then that you weren't ready to answer. I'm going to ask you now. And we had a little while. Which is, I look at this list of all-time
so we listen back.
champions. And, you've moved from that group of 3, which was an unbelievable group, into that group of 4-time champions. It's Mario Andretti, Sebastian Bourdais,
and now we could listen to it at kind of our normal speed when we're doing a rough quality tech quality check on it for doing dialogue or books on tape, podcasts.
A chance to think about the history that you laid down on Sunday at Sonoma.
Yeah, it's still a tough one, right? Like, it's for one, I don't really like to talk about myself too much, but
and now we're playing back at the original speed.
For one, to be able to call myself a Verizon IndyCar driver, to do what I love. It's not too many people get to be able to do this.
And we see that these files are just kind of reacting to that. We just ignore that.
I put a lot of what we've achieved.
So again, place it into musical mode, enter in tempo track, double the value, and then you could just turn on the tempo track.
So Scott Dixon joining us now, and this is
to play back
I interviewed in Victory Lane for SportsCenter
at faster or at normal speed.
I asked you a question then that you weren't ready to answer. I'm going to ask you now. And we had a little while. Which is, I look at this list of all-time open wheel champions, and you've moved from that group of 3.
So, and that's how you could just quickly play back at different speeds if you wanted to. Okay, we have a question. Hello, Greg. I imported a song into Cubase 12 Pro from a bunch of Waves files. The song plays well, but needs some time correction. The 2 problems I have are that I do not have any info on the original tempo, and the click in Cubase does not match the song. How do I find out what the tempo? Cubase is right now set to 120 beats per minute at 4/4. How do I make the clock work with the song so additional tracks can be recorded? How do I quantize the audio so bass guitars and drums are in the same pace? Okay, so let's go ahead and I'll just do a different project here. Okay, so let's say we have just WAV files and we have no idea what the tempo is of the files. Okay, so, and this is kind of a common dilemma of audio recording systems and computers where, so I turn on my click track and let's say there's no correlation. So I'm going to take 2 tracks. I'm going to take the kick or snare or maybe overhead drum tracks. And what I'm going to do is come directly here and we're going to go to a project menu. And I'm going to just choose to do a tempo detection. All right, so now we listen to it. All right, so we've now done a tempo detection, and what this is doing is basically figuring out kind of where the beats fall, and it will create a tempo map, and it's going to give us a time signature of 1/4. So what we want to do now is to just find, I'm going to move my signature track to the top, and let's move our tempo track right below that. Okay, so I'm just going to open up my kick track so I can see a little bigger. Okay, so right here at that kick, that's where my 4/4 starts. So we have a pickup note. So let's come over here. We're going to say, here's our 4/4. Alright, so now we've figured out what the tempo is, and we've extracted the tempo of the event. Now, if we wanted to kind of fix timing, so now, anything I record in will have the new tempo, and that new tempo track will be what's fed to musicians. Now, we can see that this tempo is fluctuating. So if I wanted this to be more steady and kind of fix timing issues, what we could do is I'm going to select all of the events. We'll go to our audio menu, to advanced, and we're going to say set definition from tempo. And we could apply, and what this is going to do is basically take those tempo changes of every single beat in the song or project, and we're going to embed that data and associate it with the particular audio files. All right, so now we do this. We see our tempo is fluctuating. So let's say it's roughly like 144. So I'm just going to type in a steady value of 144 beats a minute. And now as we play, instead of the musicians fluctuating, it's going to play back perfectly steady at 144 BPM. Or if I wanted to make it 156 BPM. Or if I wanted to just take the existing tempo map by activating the tempo, I could come here and let's just speed that part up. So and I wanted to do a retard over time, but still having those fluctuations. And then when it gets right to this point, I want it to go right dead on to the original tempo. So as we slow down, kind of doing a retard, slowing the music down. And then you could, once you've done the, so going through this process, find something that's rhythmically stable throughout the project, go to your project menu, do a tempo detection, define the downbeat if there's a pickup note, probably change the meter. If it's in 3/4, change it to 3/4. If you're in 4/4, change it to 4/4. And then select all of the events, go to your audio, to advanced, and choose set definition from tempo, and then you could change the tempo to your heart's delight. You can fix things, you can do free warping like we showed earlier, or just make the, where maybe the whole group sped up, just simply, take the tempo here and say, oh, that's all cool, but let's just not have it fluctuate as much. We'll make it a little tighter. And you could do your tempo changes like that. All right. Okay, so we have a question. In the mix console window F3, how can I change the default panels above the faders? But by default, we see the routing, inserts, EQ, strip, and sends. I would like to see the pre added to my defaults. I know this wouldn't be too tricky for you. All right, so say we're in our mixer and we see our routing, we see our inserts, we have our EQ, and we'll come over here. We have our channel strip and sends. So if we go to the racks area here, we could just place a check on pre. And then once the pre is added in the racks, at that point, it'll just kind of show up, and you could have your high cut, low cut filters, gain, and polarity inversion right there. So, and then when you save the project, or if you start off with a template for your projects, once that will, once you save the project, the pre will be in there. As you start a project, the pre will be in there. So if your template has the pre rack loaded in the mixer by default, it will automatically get loaded. Or once you enable it directly here. At that point, save the project, and those settings will be saved with the particular project. All right. Hi, Greg, and thanks for the fantastic information about Cubase. I have a question. I have a large multi-wave recording from a live gig, from a Wing Raw recording. How can I create single song projects to work with after a basic sound setting, basic arranging tracks, mixing, coloring? And how to create stereo tracks from 2 mono inputs. All right. So let's come over here. So let me just jump back to another project where we're at. Okay, so let's say we have a live recording here. Okay, I'll just hide this. All right, so let's say first off, I want to take, let's say this is song 1, song 2, song 3, song 4, song 5. And we wanted to first kind of split these particular songs, into different projects. So the first thing I would do is come over here. Let's add a marker track. Okay, and first thing I'm going to do is activate the project first. That's always helpful. All right, so let's add a marker track. Okay, and I'm going to just say, okay, this is song 1, and on my marker track, I'm going to hit the letter P, and we'll just add a cycle marker. So come here, hit the letter P, so we'll just add these cycle markers around each song. So P will put the left and right locators around the selected range. And then click on Add Cycle Marker, and you could actually make a macro to do this. All right. All right, so we have our different cycle markers here, and let's go ahead and we'll just label these. In the description, we'll give each of these kind of a name. Don't steal my song titles. They're copywritten. All right, just kidding. All right. Okay, so now we can see our marker description. So we've taken our project, and this is all one long file. So let's say it's 2 hours of a live concert recording, whatever you want to do. So at that point, we want to just come over and how do we break each of these songs into their different cycle markers? So what we do at this point is go to your File menu, and let's go to Export Audio Mixdown, and we could choose to export via cycle markers. So what I'm going to do now is just come over here, and we'll just export, let's say, cycle marker. And at this point, if I wanted to do a new project, I'll just do one of them at a time. So now what I'm going to do is to create a new project, and we'll say export. All right, and now, let me just check my settings again. All right, so let me just come here, export, audio mix down. We'll choose multiple. Sorry about that. All right, so we'll do multiple, and I'll just do it within the same. I'll just create a new project here again. Sorry about that. Operator error on my part. Okay, and now all of our files, and I had these all probably selected, but all the files will now be carried over. So let's say we do our export audio mixdown again. We'll activate this. So we're going to choose our cycle marker. We'll choose all of the audio channels. So I want these particular tracks. We'll create new project. And we could do this basically for each one that we wanted to. So now that we have this all set up, we could come over here and we could colorize as needed. So we'll just say, okay, let's come over here, just hold down the shift key, and we could colorize our different tracks like so. So if you go through that whole process, you could now come over and let's say if you wanted to keep these like same colors for all of the tracks, and this is basically taking a long recording, breaking it down into individual songs as individual projects. You could do another one and just come over here to import audio file. And I'll just, and when you go to import selected tracks from project, I'll just come here. So we will say import tracks from project. I'll just go quickly to my desktop, and so if we have this set up, we could now say, okay, I want to import only the events, and then I want these to, we'll select all, and at this point we'll say select matching. So the next time that we go to a particular project, we could keep all the colors, and if all the track names are the same, which is going to be probably the case for like a long contiguous recording, we could now just import all of these files, and we could place them onto a particular track. So to break up the different songs from a live contiguous recording, create cycle markers. So you can create your cycle markers here, and then from the cycle markers we want to export audio mixdown. Select multiple, select all your tracks, and then you could export multiple cycle markers all at once. So if I wanted to export multiple cycle markers at once, and then let's put them into, we'll create an audio track here. So as soon as I do this, we'll see that it's going to lay these all out directly within the same project. And these will be separate audio files, so the files will be much smaller in size. If it's a 2-hour recording, you may break it down to like 3 or 4 minute, 5-minute sections of a live song. And we'll watch as this goes. So you do one single marker, cycle marker at a time, or multiple cycle markers at a time here. And you can see like our first 3 marker tracks will automatically be exported with the correct times laid out for us. All right, and we had a question, how to nudge events on 2 different tracks and have it go and have it snap to, or how to nudge, let me read it, how to nudge an event on different tracks to and have it snap to a marker location. Okay, so let's say I have a marker here. All right, so generally when we have events that are snapping if we choose our grid here to events, that, if this is in the middle of a particular event that I move this over, we could have that automatically snap to the events. And that's generally intended for being on this same particular track. But let's say if I wanted to snap an event to a marker, so I'm going to just drop a marker here, and I want to snap the event to that position of the marker. All right, so if we activate again, go directly to our transport, and if we choose use video files edit mode, so I could select the event, and then this doesn't really necessarily, it does look like it snaps to it. Let me just move this in the middle of a bar just to make sure. Okay, so while that is selected, I can just come over here. So while it's selected to events, we can see that will kind of just automatically snap directly to the beginning of the marker, or we could snap the end of the event directly to the marker, like so. One other thing that you could do is, again, if we have the transport and we choose use video file as edit mode, when we select the marker, that will move the cursor there, so to the beginning. And then if we had a file selected, we could have the play position there, and you could also choose to move to cursor. So if you wanted to just come right over here, and you could just move the event ends to the cursor or the beginnings to the cursor. So you could just have that automatically snap directly to the marker, like so, with snap to events enabled. All right, let's go back to our live questions. Thanks for sending questions in advance. Again, you can send those to clubcubase@steinberg.de. All right. All right, so we see from Best Korean Jesus, how would you go about using the channel settings to send the track to two separate tracks for left and right tracks? Would exporting it the same way as effects be the way? All right, so let me just... All right. So using channel settings to send a track to two separate tracks. All right. So I'm assuming it's going to be like a stereo file. All right. So how would you go about using the channel settings to send the track to two separate tracks where left and right tracks? Would exporting it be the same way? So I'm not sure if you want to, if we get a project to convert tracks. So let's say we want to do multi-channel to mono. And then if we take this, we can now have our two mono tracks. So we could do that for left and right tracks. So let me know, Best Korean Jesus, if that makes sense for what you want to do. So, maybe instead of routing it to take this particular track, and we get a project to convert tracks and say multi-channel to mono, and you could then just take that stereo file and have it split. If that gets you to the same place ultimately that you want to do, that way all the settings will be carried over from the edit channel settings. All right, wonderful to see Thomas. Thanks for joining us today. All right, So happy to see Spike Williams from Rhonda, Wales. And again, you don't have to apologize for being late. Everyone has a lot of stuff going on. It's kind of vacation season and everything, but we're just glad you can make it. But you just have to hit the like button. All right. All right, so I just see Cubase needs to pinch to zoom for trackpads. I have to install an extra app to get it to work. I'll try it. I have my MacBook Pro is kind of in clamshell mode, kind of closed up with the monitor. But I'll see if I can get it going. I thought it kind of worked before, but if you want to send me just an email reminder for Tuesday's live stream, I'd be happy to kind of investigate it. And you could email me at clubcubase@steinberg.de. All right, so we see a comment from Spike Williams, says Tuesday's advice on orchestral articulations was really helpful. Thanks, Greg. So thanks for letting me know. Glad it was useful. You see Gerald Ely just saying that audio tempo track tip is pretty cool. Always wonderful to see Sable Winters on the live stream. Thanks for joining us this afternoon. Hope you're well. All right, so you see from Spike Williams says, when I have a tempo map and want to time warp, I get a message I can't warp while ramping. How do I get around that? Okay, so let me just do new project real quick. And we'll do a fresh. Just import an audio file. All right, so I'm going to do a quick tempo map here. So we'll just come over, do a quick tempo map. So we'll do our tempo detection, and if I select it, that would be helpful. All right, and I'll just do a quick. All right. All right, so let's say if we go to our tempo map, and it could be that we see this little dividing line. So with the tempo map, if you have it set to ramp, and let's see if I would now try to do some warp grid. So try changing this tempo map setting, Spike. Try this where it says ramp, try just putting that to step and see if that makes a difference. And again, you might, on a tempo track itself, you might have to add a tempo track and then just kind of slide the tempo track over and then see if you change that to step, if that makes a difference. All right, we see Michael Teams is granted Sable 1 gallon of fresh Texas blackberry ice cream. Being that Sable's from Texas, I'm sure she appreciates it. All right, so we have the artist known as Love joining us late, so we're so happy you made it today. All right. All right, so we see a question. I know I was late to the party, but did you find out how to make the sustain pedal work in the Model C organs? I haven't played around with it more, but I think as we discussed last time that it, it's mimicking kind of how a real organ is, and the real organ sustains until it is actually, the key is released. I did reach out, but I haven't heard back. I will be in Hamburg in a couple of weeks, so I may be able to get a definitive answer. That was the reasoning behind it, but I think it's to be authentic to the particular instrument that it's modeling there. All right, just reading through comments. I just see from Cubase X just saying, just can't imagine why I'd be intentionally disabled to sustain. The sustain pedal is one of the reasons that the piano replaced a harpsichord. And I guess you could say the organ is used in lieu of a piano because it may not need a sustain pedal. So. All right, so I think I am at the end of questions. We'll see if there's more questions that come up. If not, I guess we could wrap up a little early. We'll just give it we'll wait just a little bit. See if we get through all of the questions. Let me just make sure. All right, so we see, all right, so see more discussion on the sustain with the Model C. All right, wonderful to see Michael Pierce on the live stream. Wishing everyone that everyone is safe and well. He's running around the kitchen with this in the background now, but Greg's calming tones will keep me in the right direction. So I think Michael is just working on his soup recipe so he could share it with us. All right, so we see from Best Korean Jesus, just says, yes, that's perfect. Thank you, Greg. I guess I was on splitting the files. So it says it's been a while since he's had questions. Hard to Google because of the keywords. Thanks again. So glad it was a nice, easy, simple solution. We'll give you that feature free when you open up your Cubase this afternoon. All right, so we see A question from Elijah Brown says, Greg, how do you use automation on Cubase? All right, so anytime that you want to automate, different parameters, I'll just open up project here. Just see if I still have the one. I was thinking, oh yeah, we'll come over here. All right, so you have the W button and R button, and those will allow you to write automation. So we could enable these on the mix console or on the particular tracks. So let's say I want to go to my kick track here, and I'll just turn off my click. So if I wanted to automate different parameters, like let's say my kick, so I could do the volume, could also just do the panning. Let's open the channel settings, and if I wanted to EQ the so we could say, okay, let's add more EQ. And I wanted to now come to this point and let's narrow the Q. Let's go to the saxophone. And I wanted to automate this particular track. I click on W. So let's say I want to add more reverb, more high end. I want it to be very dry. So now as I rewind, everything that I just did will be played back and perfectly automated. So we should see my effects end. And effects end should go down. So more reverb coming up, these little stabs and down. So everything that I just did. So if we go back to the beginning, we'll look at our kick track. So we can see the volume. And these changes will play back. We could edit the changes graphically here. So my panning for the kick. Then we should get into the EQ. So I'll just move my cursor over here. And let's say I want to go to my channel strip and I want it to apply compression. Do a horrible mix here. So everything I just did will be automated and will play back perfectly every single time. And then if I wanted to, just do changes, I say, okay, I want that parameter to stay at that particular value. I could overwrite the existing automation and do it until I'm perfectly content and happy and my mix is sounding exactly how I want. All right. All right, so we see Anton, we just see a comment, I like a lot Cubase, so that's great. right, so we see Uno Memento to Michael Pierce that says he's having apple orange juice with a Finnish twist. And he hopes that you'll like it. All right. All right. Let's see some more comments here. Sorry, my chat field just jumped. All right, so I see Michael Teams is kind enough to grant me and my family and myself 1 gallon of coconut pineapple ice cream. Thank you very much. All right, so we see the Heartbreak Time Machine has smashed the like button. See, Nick says, thanks, Greg. Maybe an early coffee for you. So we've had some more questions and comments come in. So. All right, so we see Michael Pierce says soup recipes incoming on Tuesday. Today is development kitchen day today for him. Okay, so we see a question from Teddy just saying, hi, can we ask questions here? So, yeah, this is where you could ask questions. So just feel free to ask anything you want. And this is exactly the area to ask your questions. I think you might need to be under 200 characters, so. You see Jazz Dude just mentioning that Keith Emerson would just put the knives to hold down kind of tones on organ keys. And that Michael Pierce said if anyone put knives on near their Hammond, they might not get the knife back. So. Reading through comments. All right, so I think I'm at the end of, we'll see if there's any more questions that sneak in. And we'll see if Teddy gets his question in. See, Nick has granted me a mocha virtually. All right. You see Sable just saying, thanks, Greg. So we'll see if Teddy can get his question in. I know we don't want to, if he has a question he's typing up, we'll give him a minute or two. We'll see if there's any other questions. I see Graham Witcher has made it onto the live stream. So wonderful to see you from Royal Wooten Bassett in England. Thanks for joining us. All right, I'll give it another couple minutes. See, Sable says Teddy is gaslighting us. So maybe he's new and hasn't asked a question yet, but hopefully we'll get a question in. If not, we'll wrap up a couple minutes early, let everyone get their weekend started, And just a quick reminder that Tuesday we will be doing our Zoom meetup. It'll be the last live stream of the month. So we'll be doing our Zoom meetup. So usually what that means is we start doing our live stream for about 2 hours. And then the last 2 hours usually ends up being about 3 hours. Will be a Zoom meetup where everyone can kind of meet and get to socialize, get to know each other. So. All right, so we see a question from Nine Stripes Music. Hello from, I guess, Amsterdam. Are there other ways to save CPU? So, a lot of ways that people can save CPU if you're running into CPU resources. And if you're running virtual instruments, a lot of times what you could do is simply, freeze tracks. You could choose to freeze instruments in a project. You could choose to freeze, and you'll see this little snowflake icon. There's also the ability to do a render in place. And what a render in place will allow you to do is basically freezing and rendering in place will basically take a project and file or track that has a lot of processing on it. Instead of the audio being processed in real time with reverb and delays or synthesizers with oscillators or effects, instead of that doing all the number crunching and real-time math, what freezing and rendering in place will allow you to do is to basically hit a button and that will turn it into an audio file. And the audio file plays back with all of the processing that was happening in real time, consuming CPU cycles. And that will be embedded into the audio file so you hear all the sounds, all the benefits of that without having to do the real-time processing. So, but that's how you could, that's, a very common method of saving CPU resources. All right. All right, we'll give it our minute or two, see if any other questions sneak in. See, we almost had all hot mess members on, except Gareth didn't make it today. But it's wonderful to see Pablo on. Glad that he could join us from his tour bus. All right, we see Nine Stripes Music just says thank you. So let me know if that makes sense. All right, we'll give it just another minute, and then we'll be wrapping up. If there's no other questions. We see Sable Winter says, is thus the earliest we've broken. So it might be the earliest. It'll mean my index won't take as long tonight. So that's probably good. So is this the earliest we've broken? So it could be our shortest live stream in a while, but we realize that it is a Friday afternoon, the last Friday in August. So there's probably lots of people on vacation as well. But I'll give it another minute. And then if not, we'll go ahead and wrap it up. There's a lot of early English communication earlier. All right, so we see Teddy's question came in. All right. All right, so Teddy's question is how to undo the volume change when inserting the first automation point. It only undo the point, but not the volume change. I even tried the mix console history. It doesn't keep track of the volume change. All right, so let's just do it on a brand new track. All right, so let's say we have our audio track here. All right, I'll just make this obnoxiously big. All right, so, and again, the question is, Okay, how to undo volume change when inserting the first automation point. Okay, so right now, all right, so I'm going to put my automation point here. All right, let me just zoom in. I'll just redo that. So let me just bear with me just for a moment. All right, so let's add the track. All right, and let's zoom in here. Okay, so let's say I put my first automation point in. All right, so let's say I have another automation point there. All right, so it looks like undo, just Control Command Z. Is just doing that for me. So let's say now we have our automation point. And let's say if I return back here, we'll go back to the beginning. We'll see that the automation is automatically following. So let's say select, delete. All right. So I think it's maybe like this point right here, which is our initial point. So let's say we'll just have that selected. So now there's no automation points in there. So if I move this, it's not going to. So just selecting it. Now, one other thing that you could do, like as you add an automation point, another area that you could look at for this is if you go to the project browser, and then you could just see the automation points. So let's say we want to go to the volume automation. At this point, you could, select the different values here, and you could delete directly from the project browser as well. So let's say if you have a bunch of, and maybe like you're not, it's kind of being hidden. Maybe when you're not, hanging over it, try going to the project menu to the project browser. And then you could just come over here and delete your various automation points here. So that may be another way. So let me know if that makes sense. But it looks like just undoing as well will get you right back to where you were. All right. All right, so we see Michael Teams. His question is, Greg, please show how to send a mix out of the DAW to outboard gear and bring it back to the track. I picked up a finalizer for mastering. All right, so if what you want to do is just come over here to the studio, go to Audio Connections. Let's go to External Effects. We will say, okay, let's add an external effects. We will call it Finalizer. And hit OK. So what we want to do to the finalizer is tell it what inputs and outputs it's connected to. So you could make it stereo. It's probably going to be stereo. So we will come over here to, we'll call this our finalizer here. Tell it where it's connected in and out of your audio interface. So if you're going out of 5 and 6 and into 5 and 6, so we need to patch it into your audio interface. And then if you wanted to run it on your master fader, what you could do is just come over to the master fader here, go to inserts, and you'll see external plugins, and then you could say, let's go to our finalizer, and this could, by going out and into your system, it might impose a bit of a delay. So what you could do is just measure the delay, and that will ping the system, and that will then automatically do the delay compensation for you. So go to your audio connections, add an external effect, tell it where you want the external effect routed to in your audio interface. Go to whatever track you wanted to run it on, maybe the master track, load up, and under external effects, and then click on measure delay. That will do the delay compensation for you. All right. Let's see, Michael Team says Gareth is playing hooky. So you see Uno Memento says, look, we have 128 likes today, so that's great. All right. See, Michael Teams granted me 2 gold trophies, so I feel good. And I got, looks like maybe a chocolate chip cookie from Sable. All right. Thank you for that. We'll see if there's any more questions. If not, we'll go ahead and wrap up. Thank you for all of the wonderful questions that everyone's had. I hope that everyone has learned a new tip or trick. Look forward to seeing everyone on Tuesday. Look forward to seeing some new faces on the Zoom meetup. All right, so we see 121 likes now, according to Mr. Jan. 122, so that's great. Thank you so much. And I appreciate everyone spending, and I have such gratitude for everyone spending time sharing their morning, evening, afternoon, learning more tips on Cubase. So see, the chocolate chip cookie will go well with my mocha, according to Nick. So that is a good combination. So, but I want to thank everyone again for spending part of your time. Everyone, please stay safe and healthy, and we'll see everyone back on Tuesday. And if you have questions that you want to send in advance, please send them to clubcubase@steinberg.de. You see Mr. Jan says, I need to go back and watch all these from the start. So it'll take you, I think I counted it up the other day for a report. It was like 77 days straight if you watched them 24 hours straight. So, all right. But with that, we look forward to seeing everyone on Tuesday. Have a wonderful weekend. Stay safe and healthy. And everyone, make some wonderful music this weekend on your Cubase. So with that, we will go ahead and say goodbye. Thanks again, and we'll see you on Tuesday. Goodbye.